welcome. In case you just blindly stumbled into a podcast you don't want to listen to, this is Podcrushed.
Now's your time to
Turn
leave.
back now. Turn back now if you know what's good for you. No, hello, welcome. Welcome.
I want to know, when was the last time you learned how to do something that you had no experience with, and what was that like for you?
Wouldn't it be podcasting?
Is that the last time?
It's happening right now.
Always learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're asking me this. You're
all
asking
three of
us
us.
this.
Me
It's just-
too.
Sorry.
You're not the only person.
Is there
in
a third voice in here?
Hello. The last time I learned something completely from scratch was when I took a pottery class. So last October, I took a pottery class, and it was the best feeling. And now, actually, Nava, your question is reminding me that I want to do that again.
Have a kid.
Yeah, I
That's
was
true.
like,
I think you're about to. You're embarking on it.
That's right. Can't wait.
Cooking that little pot in there.
I started guitar lessons yesterday and
Wow.
bought a
What?
guitar, hired a guitar teacher. And it's been really interesting because
Wow.
the teacher is really, shout out Justin. He's so sweet. He doesn't listen to this podcast, but he's so encouraging. But it's also really embarrassing to do something one-on-one that you're really bad at, that another person has to watch you do. So I've been sort of oscillating between being really excited to do something totally new and feeling really self-conscious and embarrassed at how bad I am, even though it's my first time. But anyway, yeah. What about you, Penn?
Learning something that I'm bad at.
No, that you've never
That
done
you've
before.
never done before.
I feel
That
like
I've never done
that says
before.
a lot about
Well,
Penn
learning.
because I feel like Penn, you don't get you kind of don't have the room to be bad at things because you started so young as a professional person.
There's not. I mean, we can dig in if you like, but I mean, I have been, some kind of fame attached to me and my name and my face since I was 20. So yeah, I haven't had a whole lot of room to do something for the first time, and feel like I can just flounder and be bad at it. But
I guess podcasting would be it for you.
it would be podcasting.
Yeah.
And this clunky intro probably is a great sign.
People are
of,
you
of
are
a
failing
learning
at things
curve.
publicly, Penn.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Yep. It happens all the time. All the time. Welcome to Podcrushed. This is an AUA episode. Ask Us Anything. It's not an AMA because there's three of us.
We've actually done this before. We had another episode that was just the three of us, and it's called Three's Company. You can go check it out. You might actually want to check it out because our most frequently asked question when we polled you guys was, "What's the origin story of this podcast?" But we're not going to tell it because we've already told it on that episode.
You heard it here first. We are taking your most asked question and denying it.
Yeah.
We're denying it, we're refuting it, we're ignoring it. That's the kind of show we run.
All right. Well, stick around, and after the break, we'll be right
Hey,
back with
hold
your
on.
questions.
Yeah, can I? I would like to. What's the word?
I did it for the first time ever.
Stick
I know.
around.
Not letting
From. Okay, no, you've done it because I actually listened to something and you said stick around.
Really?
You said
Okay.
stick around. Yeah.
Okay.
And it occurred to me. I'm like, we have to stop saying stick around, guys. It's not like the 90s on the radio.
Okay.
it feels odd. But anyway, stick around.
Such an asshole.
Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn,
I'm Nava,
And I'm Sophie.
and I think we could have been your middle school besties.
PMSing and overreacting to everything. So people want to know if there was another name besides Podcrushed that we were kicking around. There was a name that Penn had presented to the group that we really liked. Penn, do you remember what it was?
Yeah, of course I do. I like that you're like. That was a little accusatory. Like,
No,
it was
I
a
love that name.
Penn,
I
you did?
I wish we had picked it sometimes.
Same.
Yeah, I love that name.
Sometimes,
I
All
still,
the time.
I mean, me too. Sometimes
I
say
call
it,
it
I'm
that
like,
in my head still.
Penn, what was it?
It was called when I was 12.
When I was
Or
12.
was it called when you were 12?
When I was 12.
When I was 12. It has a nice whoa thing to it. When I was 12, but then yeah.
A producer
yeah,
told us that it
can
was
we-
too navel-gazy. So we stuck with Podcrushed.
which is
Yeah, they said podcasts are already navel-gazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to really lean into that. So we went for Podcrushed, which is a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
I like Podcrushed, but yeah, sometimes I do think about the one that got away.
Yeah.
Well, we also got a lot of questions about our guests and some like hypothetical questions. I think we can run through them pretty quick and each give our answer. The first one is, who would be your dream guest?
I mean, everybody knows my dream guest is Taylor Swift, but I'm going to give a different answer that you don't necessarily know, which is Bill Hader. I would love to know what Bill Hader was like in middle school.
Oh, my dream guest, I think, has remained Steve Carell. I just want to.
We would love that.
I want to hug him.
Yeah.
And ask him about when he was 12.
I would be very nervous interviewing either one of them very much. See, the dream guest thing for me is like, okay, what would it be? I mean, I think I've said this before. Kendrick, maybe that's an easy answer. But would I really want to interview him? Well, yes, I would.
What about your favorite guest so far?
They all have such different qualities.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're all children of God.
Aww.
No cap, low key. Children of God. Okay, so Roy Wood Jr. was a recent one where I thought he dialed into the concept and kind of didn't leave it. More than anyone I can recall, he stayed in the middle school time, the coming of age time, the adolescent time, and he really kept plumbing it and like made it funny and like relatable. And I thought there was something there. There was something there, and that's the one in recent memory. That's just recent memory,
What about you, Sophie?
I think maybe one of my favorite episodes, like in the moment while we were recording, was Io Adebri, because she's a friend of mine from college. I hadn't seen her in many, many years. It was just really like high energy and fun. I think that makes it a little challenging to listen to because also it was one of the first ones we recorded, so we were really green as hosts. But it's one of my favorites.
Speak for yourself. I don't know.
I loved recording with Taylor Tomlinson. And something that I felt this way about Elise Myers also after, was very sad that I wasn't going to be friends with Taylor. Like when she left the room, I really felt like I really want to be friends with this person, but like it's just not going to happen. But I felt like a heart connection with her. And the interview was very different than, it just went in a different place than I expected. And I loved it. I felt like she was really genuine and authentic. And it was a great conversation.
That's sweet. Yeah. Which guest were you most starstruck by?
Penn,
have you ever been starstruck?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's, Conan, I think, was, yeah, let's interview this man who's, this is living, and he's a global icon for it, to interview other people. And he was named, I think Howard Stern named him his favorite interview ever. So that's like another iconic interviewer saying he's a good interview.
He is.
That was that or Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Just say one so then I can say the other. No, those were my two as well. I even cut a special video of when we interviewed Conan because I was so, I was shaking. I couldn't, hold my water bottle. It was a struggle. I was really starstruck. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, I remember taking a moment while we were interviewing her and noticing, I could hear my heart. I could feel it. I could hear it. It felt like a big deal.
I will say that being in her presence, it was like, especially when I, after asked her to do the Elaine dance TikTok.
Yeah.
I kind of, at that point, we'd interviewed her and I felt more comfortable. But as I rolled into it, for a moment, I was like, she doesn't have to say yes. This should go bad. And I just felt like, I'm about to ask her to, not to do the Elaine dance. But, that was a moment where I felt, because she's so iconic and especially iconic for that.
Yeah. Penn, I have to say, I think Nava and I got a new appreciation for what you go through. Rob Lowe came in person with me and Nava, which has never happened with any guest.
And it won't again.
Penn will make sure of it.
We really messed up. And I was kind of like, well, we shouldn't ask for a TikTok. I don't think we should ask. And we make sure
And that
Penn
was like,
does
what?
it.
Why? I have no problem.
So I feel like really a lot rides on you when you're the only one in person.
I prefer the digital. It's so much like gentler and easier. You can look at notes.
Oh, I prefer in person. I feel like the energy is so amazing. So I would say Julia, except that because it was remote, I wasn't as nervous. I was the most nervous for Rob Lowe, and it's because, that morning, I think Sophie figured out that we had all thought it was going to happen remotely. And then Sophie stumbled on a document where it said he was coming in person. And she texted the group. She was like, Rob Lowe's coming in person in LA. I was like, no, it's remote. I already talked to our producer about it. She's like, no, this note says he's coming in studio. And I just felt so nervous. And it also really made me appreciate that Penn is like, it feels safer when Penn is there, when he's in the room. But I will say that Rob immediately just walked in the room and was like, hey, girls, and was just just put us at ease. So I went into it super anxious, but calmed down immediately because he was so personable.
I like that you said that Sophie stumbled on a document like it was the turning point in an alien abduction case or a serial killer hot on the trail. You're like, Sophie stumbled on a document, discovered a briefcase.
Yeah.
Which moment on the podcast made you the most emotional?
I'm sorry to go back to Taylor Tomlinson, but you guys will see it. There's a moment where, there's two. For me, it was the episode with Andy Grammer where we talk about our mother's passing. There's a moment, I tell some story in that episode. I think that's maybe the most emotional I've been. But that's just an easy, if you get me to talk about my dead mom, I will cry. That's just a guarantee. That's a given. But with Taylor, although I also talk about my dead mom, that's not the moment. There's a moment where I'm recalling feeling very insecure about something that connects to how I felt in middle school. And I got really emotional. And I was really suppressing. I could have full body cried in that moment. And I really suppressed it. But that's the most emotional I've ever been on the podcast for sure.
Aww.
Yeah.
Nava, you say if you can get you to talk about your dead mom.
So easy.
I don't think
can we get you to shut up about your dead mom?
Oh my God.
She's here with us. Can we move on?
David's in the other room just shaking his head. He's just going, no. Some of you may know, some of you may not. We interviewed a few listeners, and we're still trying to figure out how to use those episodes. We really want to, but we're trying to figure out what works.
Oh,
and we interviewed one listener, and I don't think you hear me talk. You'll hear me talk for the first, I don't know, however many minutes, 10, 15, because I am just silently sobbing. Actually, it's not very silent. David wasn't there for that recording, and he was editing it, and he was like, he said for the first half hour or whatever it was, he was like, "What's wrong with Sophie?" You just hear me going. And it's because I'm sobbing throughout the whole episode. It was really, I could not keep it together. Yeah. That's the most
How does
emotional.
it feel to know that your own husband doesn't know what it sounds like when you cry?
It's not like I don't cry. He just tunes me out.
What about you, Penn? Have you been emotional on the show?
Actually, that's the one. And it's kind of hard to talk about it now. It sucks to keep it vague for our listener now. But man, I mean, I was... Crying is not something that I do rarely. I mean, I'm not going to do it, I don't know, in public. I'm not going to do it on a phone call very readily. But I'm in touch. I cry with some regularity listening to music.
Yeah.
Particularly gospel music or rap.
I had no doubt, Penn, that you could cry and were in touch with your emotions in that way. I think it's just that Nava and I cry on the podcast so often.
Oh, yeah.
And you
guys
never
are
do.
out of control.
But I wanted to...
Somebody's got to,
somebody's got to hold
the
it down.
lid on.
Yeah. Somebody has to keep asking questions.
Okay, here's the last.
Somebody's got to keep asking the celebrities for their TikTok.
Yeah.
Here is the last question of this type. I want you guys to pick any two previous guests who have appeared on the podcast to come on a new episode together. Who would you pick?
I like the ethos of that question. I'm not sure what the answer is. Let me think.
I think I would pick Alok and Gabor Mate to have a philosophical face-off. Not a face-off, not a competition, but just I feel like the two of them
I want them to compete. I want to know who wins.
Like the two of
No
them
collaboration.
going back
I
and
don't
forth
want
would be so
mutualism
interesting.
Yeah, it would. I think that's a great answer. I have to think of one that I like better, but that's a great answer.
Wait, can I have two answers? Is that cheating?
Go for it.
Okay, one is
Yeah, sure, it
Julia
is.
Louis-Dreyfus and Conan O'Brien. I mean, I just think that would be
Okay.
amazing chemistry, but it's almost too obvious. I would love to bring back Io, Debris, and Sebastian Stan because I don't know what it would feel like, but I feel like it would be fun, especially Io with Sebastian.
That's
Something
great.
about them being very different, I think, would be cool.
I would love that.
I feel like I want to take Sophie's answer and just add one more person.
Okay, thruple.
I feel like Phoebe Robinson.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know,
I like what that does
to
to the
throw
mix.
some absurdist comedy in there because she could totally hang, and then she would
sure.
just be constantly throwing an absurdist comedy that I don't know if it would throw Gabor Mate in a way because he, you know, I mean, listen, I hope he's listening. Hello, Dr.
I'm
Mate.
sure he is.
Yeah.
I'm sure he is.
Confident.
I mean, he just seemed sort of like, I'm curious, like, what does make him laugh? You know,
Yeah.
he just
Exactly.
seemed unflappable.
Yeah.
And now that, and I've listened to a lot of his talks, just kind of generally. I can't recall really. I think there's like an affable chuckle, like maybe in the spirit of solidarity with somebody
Maybe.
who's laughing, but I don't know that he.
Maybe. I feel like a lot of people will try, because humor will, you know, help diffuse a situation or like a question that feels uncomfortable. And I've seen so many people like try to bring some humor to the interview, and he's just straight-faced. Just waits for them to,
you know
to
why?
finish.
Because it's almost like he isn't uncomfortable.
Yeah, he doesn't feel the
Like,
need
that's-
to use that.
Like humor is maybe used for that, and he's just like, no, I'm there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. People also wanted to know who runs our social media, who's the most involved.
Me. Is that not clear? It's
Well,
not.
I think people would like to know that sometimes you are. Sometimes you are the one
Yeah.
who posts something, and you're the one who's commenting from the Podcrushed account.
Yeah.
And
That's true. I have commented as myself and as the Podcrushed account as though we're separate people.
oh, all of us
All
have.
of us do
yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. But then sometimes we really do, like, I'll be Podcrushed commenting on Sophie
Yeah.
and commenting on Penn.
So
and vice
you'll
versa.
never
Yeah.
know.
But we're all involved, but Sophie takes the lead on social media.
Yeah.
I like this one. If you could describe one another in one word, it's hard because I'm
For
not.
you.
That's a short answer. That's a short answer.
Someone did say
but I
when they
wanna
asked
try.
this, I think this will be hard for Penn.
They've been listening. You want to go first?
Can you guys go? No, I
Yeah,
asked
I'll go
the
first.
question,
I'll
so
go
I want to
first.
hear you
Okay.
first.
I have two answers for Sophie. Tender, Sophie. Seeker, Penn.
Ooh, those are great. Those are really good words. Aw, Nava.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry.
Oh, yeah, because you're so tender. I'm just seeking the door. You are crying.
Well, yes.
He's so tender. That's it maybe needs it to be cooked a little more.
I
That's
know,
too
I
tender.
know, I know. No, also something that happens in the studio. Sometimes I think like maybe this happened on the Bobby Burke episode. There's like sometimes my eyes get
It's the
irritated
lights.
and it looks like I'm crying and I'm like, this is really embarrassing. No, so I feel like it's a combination of both. But okay, I would say it is really hard because obviously each of you contain multitudes. I would say for Nava, the one that just comes to mind first is determined. And yeah, I think that's one of your foremost qualities, determination. And for Penn, I would say playful-ish. Because it's like sometimes you're so playful and I'm like, oh my God, this is so fun. But then you can be so serious too. And
Playful-ish. That's
and
funny.
I don't always know which pen are we gonna get.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair.
I don't find that funny at all. That's not charming. You know what's funny? For Nava, a word that I don't even know the definition to came to
great.
mind, which maybe is no, and it's like I really hope you take it the right way. Replete. I thought
Yeah, what does that mean?
Like full?
like a
Like I'm going to try to not take that the wrong way.
to me, you're like when you say something comes replete with, like you do so much. You have so many faculties.
That's a good one.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
I mean, that is. I mean, to me, replete is like when you say something. When anybody ever uses the word, it means that I'm not worried that anything's missing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's so sweet.
And she'll give her
Thank you.
all to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And then Sophie, tender's pretty good, but. I'm trying. It's the multitude thing is tough.
I think it's okay also if it's just like a word. It doesn't need to be like the one that describes.
No, it needs to be perfect. This is why.
Because he's famous, and then if he gets it wrong,
Yeah.
everyone's gonna go.
Can't be bad at
I
anything.
can't be publicly wrong about anything. I'll say surprising.
That was my other word. I
Really?
swear my other word was going to be surprising.
really?
I was like tender or surprising. Yes. Sophie
Wow.
is surprising. Yes.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
I love that. I'm
But you
really
say
glad.
more.
She's
Sorry, I didn't
surprised.
mean to cut in. Penn, say more. Sorry.
Oh yeah, well, because like tender is a great starting place, right? But then it's like you are surprising at different points for very different reasons. I think like sometimes your humor surprises me. You know, you just cut in with like just the right. You're gonna cry, aren't you? That's not surprising.
I mean, I haven't
not the
stopped.
light.
I haven't stopped
not the
crying
light,
from
guys.
tender.
Yeah, your humor, I think, in particular, sometimes is surprising, just in the particular cut that it has.
Yeah.
Or not, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean like
No, yeah.
different kinds of humor. Is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
Oh,
And I even think in interviews, it's not so much surprising, certainly not anymore. But I think you come in with some real insight at very special moments.
thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a fun activity. Thank you to the listener who gave us that question.
Yeah. This is a question for Penn and Sophie. I am not pregnant, don't have any children, so I'm going to skip this one. But I want to know. Someone asked, what have you learned that you want to bring to your future kids' middle school experience? This is interesting for you, Penn, because you actually have a kid in middle school and you have a kid who will be in middle school. And Sophie's probably thinking about her baby's whole life.
Yeah. Go ahead, Soph.
I really look back on middle school and regret how much of myself I hid, or not intentionally, but how much of myself I suppressed. I feel like in elementary, there was like a playfulness and a goofiness that I lost in middle school because I was so concerned about fitting in, about a certain friend group that I wanted to be a part of. And I really tried to grow up very, very fast in middle school. And I don't know how I would teach my child this, but I really want to be intentional about helping them maintain an innocence or a playfulness or whoever it is that they are. Like I met someone recently, a high schooler who's obsessed with birds. And I was like, that is just so sweet. I love that you have not lost that like the other kids in your middle school or high school, because after talking to her, it became clear that like, you know, there's other kids in school who don't think that's cool. But
You
I
mean
love,
like all of them?
yeah. But I love that.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's true.
I just love that hasn't deterred her. It hasn't stopped her
Yeah,
from
no,
being
it's
obsessed.
I love
Yeah.
that.
So yeah. How about you, Penn?
There's some kids in this person's school that maybe don't think that's the most relevant or interesting thing.
Just
Yeah.
some,
The birding.
you know.
I
birds.
did want to say, this is very random, but we had Jenny Han on the show this season, and some of you might have seen her show Exo Kitty. And I said this to Sophie, that Exo Kitty surprised me and what I really liked about it, and I can't remember if I've seen another protagonist like this, they might exist, I just haven't seen it, is that girl, Kitty, gets bullied a little bit, and normally in the face of that you see a character change, get a little bit harder, and Kitty is like unbothered, stays exactly the same, stays herself. And I was like, this is such a healthy protagonist for us to see. We just never see that kind of a story. And it reminds me of that girl you're talking about. I love that. I think that's a great thing to try to instill into your daughter.
Yeah, the interesting thing with my 14-year-old, so he's entering high school, and his biological father is very much in the picture, which I just say because, like, it's interesting when you see somebody at 0, there's just something about that where time is on your side to, like, figure it out. And I feel like with my oldest, I've always been playing a little bit of catch up, like, but now, is great because it's like finally we can have some really mature conversations, and that's like that's a welcome thing. So I feel like I've just thought part of the reason that I have given the answer before to our like final question, you know, what would you do and say, and I think I've revised my answer to be like I would just hold him and try and do whatever it takes I would listen so that then he could listen to me. You know, I see with my oldest how, you know, you can try and say whatever you want, but that's not necessarily going to get through. And so I just think about, I don't know. With my oldest, I think about that, and with the youngest, I mean, he's a ways away. I think actually Sophie's answer is probably the best one to not feel like you have to hide yourself. That's what everybody talks about when we come on this show, right? Like it's the tragedy of adolescence and middle school, if there is one, and I think there is one in most cases, that we hide ourselves. We start to learn that us being just authentically, unabashedly ourselves is not going to be well received, at least by other people our age. So we become so self-conscious, we start to just find every possible chance to conform in some way to sort of minimize like that, and that's really unfortunate, you know. Worst case, it can create really bad people, and then the best case is like it just ends up hurting later. So I think about that really for both of them, just wanting them to feel like it's okay to be who they are, and of course the way that looks for a toddler is so different.
Yeah. Do you regret something that you said or did to someone in middle school? What was it and why?
The things I'm remembering are like moments I can remember accidentally being, I mean, I'm serious, like the way that racism and misogyny, they're in us even if we're not like an active participant in it. They're in us by default, and we have to cleanse ourselves. It's that age that I can remember moments where I was like, you know, the microaggressor without realizing it, or being too casual in my language around the way I speak about women. Like I now look back on it and I'm like, oh, it's easy to forget that I was like that, because that's not who I am in my essence, but like it's the persona that you sort of try to put on. But in middle school, I honestly think I just remember being so I felt at least so tender and often so quiet. I can't remember anything that I regret from then, other than like probably just being so harsh with myself.
I have two. One might be too real. You guys tell me. So one is when I was in 7th grade. I might have told this story, but I was like, haha, when I told it the first time. But when I was in 7th grade, this boy brought like really hardcore pornography to class, and we watched it. Like, I shouldn't laugh. But our history teacher would like play a film every day, and he like left, and this kid like swapped his film for this like hardcore porn film. And I remember that everyone in the class watched except this one girl, Maria, who just like stood and stared at the wall. And I wish that I had stared at the wall with her, because that was like my first encounter with sex, and it was like very hardcore It was like a BDSM. I still remember it clearly.
Oh my God.
And I just can't imagine that had any positive effect on my brain at 12 for that to be like my first encounter with sex. So I wish I hadn't watched it. Yeah.
That's actually a good one. I regret all the porn I watched. There we go.
My dad is going to die. He's going to like, why did you say this?
Does he know this story?
No, he's going to find out on the podcast.
But haven't you told this before? I've heard that before.
I have, but I don't think I described the nature of the porn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's one. The other answer is sort of like I had a birthday party. It was either my 13th or my 14th. And I remember there was like a girl that was like in my friend group, but like I didn't think she was like that cool. And someone who I thought was really cool had RSVP'd for my birthday. And I hadn't invited this other girl yet. And I decided not to invite her. And my mom was like, you need to invite this person. And I didn't. And my mom was like, I really think you shouldn't exclude her. And I was like, it's my birthday. I got really mad at my mom. I was like, it's my birthday. Like, you don't get to pick who comes to my party, la, la, la. And so my mom was like, okay. And I didn't invite her. And I think it was obviously the wrong choice and it was selfish. And I wish I would have invited her. Like, she found out. And
she found out.
She found out she wasn't invited and it really hurt her feelings. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, I feel very similarly to you, Nava. There's like 2 channels of regret. And one is like saying mean things, like, or like joining in on when like a group of friends are making fun of someone in the class, whether it's to their face or usually behind their back. I didn't have like a strong enough backbone to be the person to say like, no, I like this about that person, or we shouldn't be talking like that. I just joined in. I really like just totally was brought into that. And I regret that a lot. But another one, the story that came to mind when you told yours, Nava, is when I was in 8th grade, because I moved in the middle of 8th grade from the Philippines to China. And then at the end of my 8th grade year, I like begged my parents to let me go back and visit my old friends and my old school. So like 6 months or so after I left. And
in the Philippines?
In the Philippines, yeah. So I went back alone. Like no one in my family came with me, and I stayed with friends. And I remember one of my friends, he like took me to a party. And my mom didn't know, my parents at home didn't know like what I was like really not getting up to anything good on that trip. And I look back on that trip and I feel really like when I think about myself at 13, 14, I'm like, oh, you were so like alone. And I regret not turning to my parents more during that time. I saw some things, I did some things that I'm like shocked by now when I think about a 13 or 14-year-old little girl. So yeah, I think like not turning to my parents more in moments like that.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing.
Okay. Someone wants to know, what was a song or album that mattered most to you in middle school?
I think something that I struggled with growing up was like I'm grateful for it now, but having a lot of different cultures and being like, which one am I? Am I Puerto Rican? Am I Persian? Am I American? Am I allowed to express which one I am in front of other people? So like, I remember music being a big thing where it's like whatever my friends were listening to, I had to like it too, even if I didn't. Like, that's how I felt. But I do remember asking for my birthday, I think it was my 13th, this famous birthday, like telling a friend that I really wanted the Third Eye Blind album, and that being like, I'm allowed to be American. Like, I'm allowed to want like an English speaking album. And it was the Semi-Charmed Kind of Life. And I loved that album. I mean, I listened to it for like years and years. And I just remember like that being a moment where I didn't ask for the album that I thought all my friends were listening to, and that just being like significant. So that's a special album to me.
That's cool. When I was in middle school, I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast, that when anybody asks me, like, what kind of music do you listen to? It immediately makes my, like, palms sweat. I'm, like, stressed. But one thing I really remember about middle school is my friend group was really big fans of the OC. And the way we would get all of our music was this website called theocsoundtrack.com.
Oh.
And it just was, like, someone uploaded all the songs that would ever, and they would update it every week, like all the songs that were ever on the OC. You could just download from that website, and most of my music, because it was like already, it was like a filter for like indie, cool, alternative music. And I remember there was a song called Orange Sky that like I heard recently, and I was like, immediately brought back to middle school.
For me, I think it would have been when Cisco went solo. And it might be the thong song just because it was the single
Can
off
we please
of the
play the thong song at this moment?
Let me
All right. Anybody who remembers when it modulates and he goes, no, and the helicopter shot out above, it was in the red leather pants. Okay, this is a quick one. Actual rapid fire. Watch me turn it into not.
I know.
How does everyone drink their coffee?
Full of sugar.
That's right.
That's the only way I'll drink it.
Nava, do you really like coffee though? You don't.
No, I like an iced vanilla latte. and things in that genre, but never just like a regular coffee. No.
In the morning, I do really like a hot drip, no matter the time of year. But generally, if I go out, I want like an iced cortado.
Coffee hits me so hard, that I have to be particular about how I take it and when I take it. It's like, for me, it's a full-on drug. It's like it has a serious effect on my day if it's not at the right time or it's on too empty of a stomach or whatever. So I prefer an 8-ounce Americano with a splash of whole milk around the hour of 9 o'clock. And this is when I've been up probably since 6,
So it doesn't start your day off.
Yeah, that's kind of how I like it. If I do anything else, it's like playing with fire.
If you could take a vacation anywhere in the United States, where would it be?
In the United States.
I really want to go to Wyoming. I really want to go somewhere like beautiful nature that I've never been, where it could be like more quiet, maybe leave my phone behind. I would really like to do that.
Now you have to go to Yellowstone National Park.
I'm writing it down,
it's one of my favorite places in the entire world. I just went here, but it was so good. I want to go again. Lake Powell, it crosses both Utah and Arizona. It was, I think, after we went with a group of friends or 2 other friends, and I said that night, I was like, I think that was one of the best days of my life. And they were like, really? And I was like, well, no, I don't know. I mean, just one of them.
But we're together. Like, what?
No, because you're talking about the thing Alok described, like the most romantic scene, being with your friends on a boat in nature.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense as a favorite day.
Actually,
it was really special.
I agree.
Yeah.
Penn?
Somewhere where you can swim. I really love swimming, and preferably not where you're like freezing, by the way.
Yeah.
Because you can do that. But I do love mountains, and I love to swim. Can you combine those, and it's not totally freezing?
Hawaii?
Somewhere.
Puerto Rico?
Wyoming. I think you can do it in Wyoming.
You can also do it in Puerto Rico if we count that as U.S., and you can do it in Hawaii.
Yeah.
What's a lie you tell often?
I do this thing that I call a panic lie all the time, like constantly, where like here's an example. I went on a hike with a friend not too long ago and showed up, and I just thought I thought it would be more like a walk. And I showed up in jeans and like a crop top, and he was in like full hiking gear, and it was so hot. It was like one of the hottest days, and he was like, is that what you're wearing? Aren't you hot? And I was like, this is just all I had. Everything else is in the wash. I didn't want to tell him, like, I misunderstood what was going on, and so I'm wearing the wrong thing. But I just will do that. I'll just tell a lie like that.
That's funny.
I think sometimes it's true, but often if my answer is it's fine, that's a lie. I'm probably more hurt and more upset than I want to say.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. Moving on. For me, it's when I say I'm going to do something shortly, it's not a lie. It's just that
An ambition. It's a dream.
it is like often I'm like, yeah, no, I can do the next 2 hours, and it's usually like closer to 5.
Nava and I knew that.
And it's yeah, it's not a lie. It's just like it's without fail.
Okay.
Ben, what's your beard care routine?
You mean my wife?
Oh.
Hey, this guy's got jokes. Shots fired. Well, it's shaven. I mean, right now.
Do you have beard? Do you use beard oil?
Yeah. So coconut oil. Coconut oil is the go-to. Argan oil or coconut oil. That's all.
Penn, I'm just going to, two questions that come up on our TikTok frequently. One is, what is your hair care routine, and what is your cologne? We've had one person just relentlessly. Every video. What is his cologne? What is his cologne?
So here's what it is. Coconut oil. Coconut oil. I use it for face, beard, and hair.
Listeners, if you're only listening, you miss Sophie give the biggest eye roll.
It's just like, I don't need anything.
But
I get it.
But
No,
you
I tell you about my
how often I look.
9-step skincare routine. And Ben is just like coconut oil on everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, that's
but
amazing.
you see how I look pretty unkempt a lot. You see behind the thingy, the veil.
This question is a trap.
Yeah, right.
But what about cologne? No cologne?
Well, coconut oil has a nice smell to it. Who wears cologne, guys? It's 2023.
It's a $1 billion industry, Penn. A lot of people are wearing cologne.
Or like a
Yeah, but
scent.
it's like-
Maybe not cologne, but like a scent, like an oil, a
No.
body oil. But
No,
coconut
so for
oil
me
is a body oil,
personally-
but it has
it
it
has a
has
scent.
its own natural scent. It's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've lost me, though.
I mean,
I love... One of my things that I find most attractive in a man is a cologne. Like the cologne that he chooses if
Really?
I like it. Yes. I love a good cologne.
I just feel
on
like
a
they're
man.
always so strong. Like, see, here's the thing. I'm not gonna lie. I have a very, very, very sensitive, like keen sense of smell, very much, and I can recognize a beautiful scent, no doubt. But I almost always feel like I like that scent. I don't like it on a human. Like I like humans to smell like humans. Yeah. And I'm not saying like, oh, I like body odor either. I'm just like, be clean, please. Like, be clean.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
I know what you mean.
would prefer to just to not think about. I would prefer, I think, when it comes to a person, to not really even think about smell, because so often it can be something that's less pleasing. But I think like, because it's not, yeah. So it's like, if anything, I got to be honest, the slightest hint of rose oil, like the slightest hint of it to me is like the most beautiful smell. Okay, and then the other is like the sort of, what's that place called? Body Shop, or like there's the Bath and
Bed Bath
Body
and Beyond.
Works?
Or no,
No.
Bed Bath
Bath and Body Works. Isn't that
Bath and
something?
Body Works, yeah.
Bath
so
and Body
intense.
There's like a vanilla smell that every teenage girl I knew back in the day wore. It was vanilla, sugar, something.
Yeah.
And every now and then when I smell it, I'm like, it's oh, I just lost it and hit the mic. It really brings me back to being a teenager and the smell of so many teenage girls I was around. And I loved that smell then because I was like, that's what a teenage girl smells like. But I don't like it now.
No. Bath and Body Works is so intense.
Actually, so
Yeah.
if I had to think of like one scent that transports me to middle school, it's like Victoria's Secret pear body lotion. I just remember that being very popular when I was in middle school. Everybody had that. Yeah. Do you guys have thoughts on an age gap in a relationship? Someone wanted to know.
This actually happens to me all the time, and it happened to me recently where I get on like my soapbox about something and I go really hard on it, and then it turns out it affects someone in the group that I'm talking to
Right there.
personally.
Oh.
Yeah. This happened to me recently, and it was about age gaps. And so I'm like trying to practice not having such strong opinions or not sharing such strong opinions. But I also think the reason I have such strong opinions is because I just have personal experience with it being like a young girl in my like 19, 20, 21, and being in relationships with older men, maybe like 7, 8 year age gap. And when I was in it, I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. And I felt very mature, and I thought it was an equal playing field. And I think those men have wonderful qualities, yada, yada, yada. But looking back now as an adult and now being the age that those men were, I'm like, it definitely wasn't an even playing field, no matter what, no matter how lovely they were, no matter how much they might have tried to make it that way. I just was not.
You were just so much more advanced.
They couldn't compete.
You need to give them time to catch up.
No, I think especially with if you're a woman and you're the younger one, I think there's just an inherent power dynamic that is not healthy, and I think it can be dangerous. Yeah.
Really holding back.
You should have heard me before.
Thank you for sharing that, Sophie. I was going to say the only, it's probably not the only, but the strong opinion that I have about it is that whatever applies to women applies to men and vice versa. So like if you feel like it's appropriate for a man to date a woman that's 10 years younger, then you should also feel that it's appropriate for a woman to date a man that's 10 years younger, but that doesn't seem to be like the case in society. So that's just my only thing. But in general, I feel like a 5 years in either direction has always felt the most comfortable to me. I feel like I've always wanted to get to know someone within my generation. But that's just me. I'm not saying that has to apply to everyone, but that's what feels like it's like in the pocket. So
that was very measured and gentle. I really should have taken.
No. I like, but I also don't have the experience that you've had. Yeah.
Let me pop off with some hot takes.
Let's hear 'em.
I don't know. I mean, I can recall being 14, 15, 16, and all my girlfriends, my friends who were girls, you know, at some point, like, dating a guy who might be 19 or 20. And at the time, I was like, I thought it was absurd, but also trying to accept it as a norm.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm older, of course, I'm like, yeah, no, that ain't right, you know? And then, yeah, you know, once you're 25 and 30, maybe. But then 30 and 40, like if you're 30 and 40, I think that's okay.
I agree with that.
You know, I think, and then if you're 40 and 50, 40 and 60, I mean, so it's all contextual. And I think when you're in, but I think below 30, we have so much to learn from each other. And I like the idea of people being the same age, like below 30. I like that. I don't know why, because it's something about equality, you know?
Yeah.
And then beyond that, there's so much context that's needed.
Just while we're on the topic of love, none of the listeners asked this question, but I have benefited from advice from both of you. So I want to ask you guys a question. It's a very specific question, but if you want to answer a broader question about love, feel free. The specific question that I have is, because you had previous relationships and then the person you married, sometimes it's that, like, you could have married a previous person, but you weren't ready. And sometimes it's just that, like, oh, you met the right person. But was there a quality or, like, a test that you had to overcome to be ready when the right person came in your life? And is there something that you've observed in other people? Like, maybe it's something specific to you, but maybe there's also something universal. You've noticed that until someone X, Y, or Z, it's just not going to work out for them. Like, there's, like, some internal qualities that have to be there for you to be ready for marriage. I'm just curious about that.
Totally, yeah. Well, because when I met Domino, she already had a son. The casual nature in which most relationships can start just wasn't there. And so it was pretty clear for me early on if I was going to go past any point, any at all, like I really wanted to feel like, you know, I don't know if I would have said marriage. I don't know what I would have said when I met her, but I knew that something was changing for me already. And by the way, I was becoming a Baha'i. And, you know, I mean, I stopped drinking. I no drugs of any kind, even though I wasn't ever, like, super into any of that. Just the importance of, like, fidelity. Just thinking about all the things that I already felt and knew were then completely illuminated and highlighted. And so it just became very clear to me, like, the importance of long-lasting, trusting relationships.
Yeah, I think for me, there was a very clear shift between previous relationships and David. And that was, I made the decision to have a period of friendship first with the person that I thought maybe there could be something more, because I hadn't done that in previous relationships and they were not working out. And I realized through, like, conversations with my dad specifically, that the process was, like, initial attraction, immediately talking about it, deciding we wanted to, thinking that we were being very intentional, deciding like we want to get to know each other with the idea of marriage in the future, like just like very serious dating right away, which meant that I was getting to know them in the dating process. And it meant that I was already becoming, I was already falling in love and like maybe infatuation before I really knew them. And so when things would come up, maybe there would be like things that it became clear, like, oh, we wouldn't be compatible in this way, or I don't know how I feel about this quality, this character trait. I was already so attached. And I decided after my last relationship before David, I really want to extend this period of friendship in getting to know someone, because I don't want to put myself in that position again where I feel like not trapped necessarily. I never felt trapped, but that's what I was doing to myself. I was trapping myself in a situation that wasn't going to be good because I was so attached already. And so I did that with David. We were friends for quite a while before we ever acknowledged that there were feelings, like the better part of a year. And I think that was crucial. I would suggest that to most people. It doesn't have to be the better part of a year, but just like give yourself time to actually get to know a person where there's low stakes, you know?
That may be the hottest take of any ever, that you're a proponent of the friend zone.
Yeah, I really am. And it's true. I think it's very hard to do that nowadays. It's very hard not to immediately launch into dating.
I think the thing that I've been learning, something that I've previously felt is like I don't like people very often, but then when I do, I'm like, oh my God, I never feel this way. So let me just like open my heart wide open because this happens every 5 years or something. So I feel like there's a couple related things. One is just like, I just need to meet more people because there are so many great people. Like I should be feeling that way more often. I shouldn't be feeling that once every 5 years. I should be feeling that like every couple weeks.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm kind of open to this person. Let's see.
Nava's entering her slutty era. I want to proclaim it from the
I was going to say
mountaintops.
the other day, Penn texted me, there was like a circumstantial context, but no context that morning. And he was like, have you entered your slutty era yet? And it was like, I woke up to this text. It was so funny. I laughed so hard.
It was right on time.
It was right on time.
It was
perfect. So just like meeting people more often. And then I sort of agree with Sophie. Like, I don't know if I would call it just being friends, but I think like just low stakes, like easy come, easy go. You don't have to get attached because if you're meeting a lot of people, you're not putting so much pressure on like this one person that you feel a connection with. I think you can be more detached, and I think you can make more clear-headed decisions from a detached place, and not overinvest when it's like too soon. So that's what I'm trying to do.
We actually got a lot of questions about our faith, about the Baha'i faith specifically, because that's something we've mentioned a few times. The three of us are Baha'is. So we wanted to answer at least one question in that vein. Someone asked, how did each of you find or accept religion, and how has it affected your view on life?
So for me, I mean, I found the Baha'i faith when I wasn't seeking out religion at all, but I was spiritually seeking, and I was staying with... I was trying to learn from a particular indigenous culture called the Kogi tribe, which is in Colombia, in the Sierra Madre Mountains, I believe. And so I was staying there. I met a Baha'i there, didn't even try to stay in touch. And then just over the years, ultimately, we connected over conversations that had to do with, you know, what does my own spiritual and personal transformation have to do with that of society, the transformation of society, you know, how what is my role in that, and what is its role in changing me? And, you know, there is a Baha'i framework for that very explicitly and implicitly. And that's in a nutshell, how I came to faith, to the Baha'i faith. And then faith as a larger thing was always just, other than that, it was very, very vague.
I just want to say that Penn tells this story in more detail on Dua Lipa's podcast, At Your Service, really beautifully. I thought that episode was really beautiful. I never told you, but so if you want to hear more.
I tell it very in-depth on Baha'i, Rainn Wilson was the host of a podcast called, Baha'i Blog Cast?
Baha'i Blogcast, yeah.
Yeah.
In that episode, that's almost all we talk about in a way. So if anybody's particularly interested, you can go check that out.
My family... have been Baha'is my whole life. It was really when I was 18, 19 years old, I took a year off after high school, and I went and spent a year volunteering at the Baha'i World Center in northern Israel. I think before that, I always thought like, oh, it's this something. It's a part of my life, and it will always be a part of my life. A very beautiful one I care very much about. But then it was during that year that I wanted it to become a more central aspect of my life and sort of like a lens through which I saw most everything else. Because I realized this like beautiful aspect of the faith, something that comes up in the Baha'i community a lot, which you've talked about, Penn, before too, is this dual process of transformation, your own transformation, your personal transformation, and also the transformation of your communities around you and the world around you. And that really resonated for me when I started to see like a way to actively live out faith.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk about the second part, which is how did it affect your view on life? Like Sophie, I was born and raised Baha'i, so I don't know what I would have been like without it. But I feel like I'm so grateful to have the Baha'i faith. I feel, for me personally, I feel like I would be desolate without it. And it's like and I mean this like truly genuinely, like it's what I treasure the most. And I think a lot about how in this life, there are a lot of things that are out of our control and that we don't have certitude about. And it's terrifying to know that the thing that you love the most can just be like ripped out of your life, or you don't know the outcome of something. But we all have sovereignty over our relationship with God. And I think that like nothing can change it except for you. And you have sovereignty over your standards. Like you can set the standards in your life and no one can betray them except for you, no matter what your circumstances are. And I think that that's like the bedrock of life, is to have sovereignty over these areas. And so I like treasure my relationship with God, and I try to set high standards. And when I fail them is when I feel the saddest and the most depressed. And when I uphold them is when I feel the most confident and the most happy. And so I love having a framework for making decisions, and I love having something that is completely mine that no one can ever take from me. And for me, that's my faith.
Lovely.
Yeah, what she said. I like that.
Yeah, let's just delete the other two. Highlight, delete.
Okay, final question. I thought this was such a fascinating question. Props to whoever submitted it. If someone gave you a box with everything you've lost, what would be the first thing you'd look for?
My virginity. Oh, it's dumber than it sounds.
Great answer, Penn.
Smarter than it sounds.
Where did you get that answer?
Yeah. No, you know, right now what it would be? It would be the friggin' needle on my record player.
Oh.
Right now. Because I really cherish being able to listen to records in a special way with like the nice system that I have. And anyway.
Can you replace it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's low on the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nava, what's yours?
You know, honestly, it's jewelry. I don't even know if this counts. It's not lost. It was stolen. But basically, I had a little like makeup bag full of makeup, and at some point in my life, all I had, no money, but I had inherited like a few pieces of gold jewelry from my grandma, and my mom had given it to me on like a very special occasion. And it was like everything it was like all of my financial possession were just like these little pieces of jewelry, and they were really special to me because they were my grandma's. And someone stole it on a flight. And I still think about that jewelry, and I'll never be able to replace it. And if I could get that back, I would get it back. Yeah.
That's awful. In our first year of marriage, David and I went and visited my parents in Italy, and we took these Polaroids that were so good. And and then we left them somewhere like by the pool for like an hour. We were staying somewhere, and we went back and they were gone. And I swear it was the person who was like, there was someone working there who took them. I really think he took them.
So weird.
And we asked, and
It's because they were so good.
they were so good.
There's something creepy about that too,
yes,
though. Someone stealing your Polaroids.
It
Polaroids.
was very weird.
This was so nice. I feel like I did get to know you both a little bit better.
This was really enjoyable.
Yeah. Thanks for everyone who submitted a question.
Nothing like an AMA. An AUA. Oh.
Let us know if you liked this episode and if you ever want us to do something like this again. I'm always saying we should do host only episodes.
Sophie doesn't even want guests. She's like, let's get rid of the guests. Let it just be the three of us.
It would help me make my case. I'll print out those comments.
Yeah, I'm interested to know if people find this interesting. You know?
See you next time.
Bye, Podcrushers.
We're not going to tell you the origin story, so you have to go there.
But
Did we tell it accurately, though?
I think so.
Yeah, why would we not?